individual's right to judge and lead their lives according to their own position, as long as it's respectful of other people, living in a free society.
We hope you enjoy today's program and others in the weeks to follow. Hello, thanks for being with us again today. We have a very interesting half hour ahead of us, and you have heard in the introduction that we as secular humanists are committed to the use of science and reason in determining those things that we find valid. And so our show today, which is about conspiracies, contemporary conspiracies, requires that we then apply our reason and logic and determine whether we find these conspiracies to have merit. And in order to talk to us about this, our host, who is also a political activist, Michael DiBari. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
And just tell us in general how you became interested in conspiracies, how deeply interested you are, and some of the conspiracies that you think that the public should know more about.
Mm-hmm. Well, basically, I guess it could start before 9/11. I can go back to the Vietnam War. I was politically active back then in stopping the wars and seeing what forces behind the scenes really motivate our government to do the things that the people don't want. But 9/11 was a catalyst. Katrina spurred me even further into activism to try and do something about what I can see now as a point in time in history that we cannot remain silent. And when I say we, I mean everybody in the general public. This is not a time where we can be complacent. This is not a time that we can sit back and wait for somebody else to do something.
When you say we, you mean the American people?
The American people and beyond, because I think this goes beyond the United States, but certainly here we have to deal with our immediate problems and with what we can do with our own situation. But the conspiracies that are being unfolded now span the globe, because this is a worldwide conspiracy where you can't open up a newspaper now, listen to a program where they don't talk about a formulation of a one world government, one world currency, and all of this is not good for the sovereignty of nations that we have had for up till now. And it basically is, that's the premise. It goes beyond our borders. But we are looking at some very perilous times today. That's why I'm kind of running around with my hair on fire, trying to get people to see, wake them up out of their complacency and realize that we just can't sit back and watch TV, watch the ball game, and expect like life is going to be anything in the near future like it has been for the past 40 or 50 years. We're about ready to head into some extremely dramatic and
the general public media has been telling us, but it's primarily economic, that we are facing very possible serious consequences of the bad economics that the world has been living with. Mm-hmm. So that part of it is not being kept from us.
Well, it's not being kept from us, and it was also planned. You have to remember that the money doesn't disappear; it just gets shifted. It goes somewhere else. But who's controlling the finances? Ansel Rothschild said, "You give me the power to coin a nation's money, and I care not who makes their laws." So when you look at the central banking and the fiat money system that's going down, which thankfully a lot of people are starting to become aware of now, and realize that it's a huge Ponzi scheme. And this Ponzi scheme, and the idea, again, to form this one world government that they're shooting for, is to destroy all currencies. Once they can destroy all currencies, then they can bring in a one world currency, and from that's the precursor to a one world government.
Now, when you're talking about a scheme, it means there have to be schemers.
Yes.
Who are these people?
Well, I would look to the central bankers. I would look to our Federal Reserve Bank. I would look to the central banks of the world. I would look to the Bank of London, the movers and shakers of the world. So you're looking at basically the shadow groups would be the CFR, would be the big one. That's the Council on Foreign Relations.
All right.
The Council on Foreign Relations is a shadow government, and they do run our policies.
And they consider it advantageous to have a single world currency?
Yep.
What is the advantage to them of that?
Power. You control the currency, you control the people. And that's what they're looking for. You have to understand, we're not talking about sane, rational people here. They're sociopaths. They are control freaks, and they want it all. They're not happy that the 1% that the Occupy NOLA groups and the different Occupy groups are going about, the 1% they're talking about. The 1% control 85% of the wealth in the world. Well, they're not happy with that. They want it all. And they're coming for it. And once they get it all, they have no need for us.
Let me be sure I understand, because my understanding about the 99 and the 1% was that the 1% had the money, not necessarily that they wanted to control money. What is the suggestion that they want to control currencies? They've got it. What more do they want?
Money is not their turn on. Power is their turn on.
I see. Power to do what?
Well, I mean, think like an insane person. The power to do what? Control, to have it all. There's no the mistake that rational people make, sane people make.
Oh, you're accusing me of being rational and sane.
I'm afraid so.
All right.
I'm afraid. And indeed, most people, rational, common sense, have a hard time understanding what the elites, how the elites think, because they don't live in our world. They live in a separate world, and that separate world in itself will breed insanity. It's the old cliche, power corrupts absolute, power corrupts absolutely.
Yes.
When you are born into a system of power, if you were born into that high elite class, you got to remember these people are inbred to begin with. And the sickness that is there with them is just that. It's a sickness that we as people, ordinary rational people, cannot conceive. Then this is the wall that a lot of people run into. I can't believe that they would do this. I can't believe that people would do that. Well, yes, you can't, because you're not sane. You're rational. You're thinking normally. These people are not normal.
All right. So there are these limited numbers of people who not only have but desire great power and great wealth. And what are some of the instances of what they have done?
Well, start wars. I mean, probably every war that's been fought, major war that's been fought for the past several hundred years has been backed. They back both sides. The bankers, if you look at the Rothschild banks, the big bankers, Bankers of London, have funded both sides of every war. They sell arms over here, and then they rush over to this country and sell arms over there and say, "Did you see what this guy did?" And they create wars. Why? Because that's how they gain most of their money. Money is very profitable for the central bankers, because they can loan this fiat money and put the countries in debt. Once the countries go in debt, they can come and foreclose, take over the country.
And how long has this major worldwide conspiracy been operational?
Well, you could say you really take it back maybe a couple of thousand years, but I would bring up a speech that Zbigniew Brzezinski made about 6 months ago in front of the Trilateral Commission, which is another one of these sub-secret semi-groups that can control behind the scenes things that are going on. And he's before the elites, and this is the hubris of these people, because you can go ahead and Google everything. In fact, everything I'm saying, you can go ahead and Google and look this up. It's verified. And you can hear him saying this in front of the elites he's talking to. He's on stage, and he's saying this. There are two things that we are facing now that we haven't had to face before. For the first time in world history, we, being the Anglo-European elites, have to now start thinking about sharing the world power with the emerging Asian power nations that are coming up. Mm-hmm. The second thing we have to face is this. For the first time in world history, there is a worldwide political awakening to what we have been doing for the past 400 years. So you can go back to 1776 and look at the Illuminati papers, that a courier was hit by lightning in France, and he was carrying papers that they found. This is give you an idea how far ahead in advance they plan these things. And these papers stated who is going to fight World War I, who is going to win, who is going to lose, who is going to fight World War II, who's going to win, who is going to lose, and who is going to fight World War III, who is going to win, who's going to lose.
I'm most interested in number 3.
Indeed.
What did those papers say about that?
Well, that would be right now. I would say that we are in World War III. When you look at the number of countries that are currently in conflict, that we're in conflict with, we're fighting in 5 different countries right now.
Absolutely, but what did the Illuminati papers say about that?
Well, it's basically going to be the East against. They want to pit the East against the West. And the contention is to go ahead and destroy Israel and destroy the sovereignty of the country. But it's a death cult. These are eugenicists at heart. These people want to reduce the world population by approximately, well, down to 500 million is what their goal is.
From how many billion now?
7 billion.
That's a lot of dead people.
Yes, it is.
I'm noticing on your shirt the word oil, mm-hmm. and I do understand how that plays into politics and war. Mm-hmm. Now, what is the conspiracy around the concept of oil?
Well, it's a resource, obviously, that is a controlling factor, which plays a major role in what they're doing. Like I said, these elites have been controlling the world resources now for thousands of years. They're not about to give it up. They still do. So it is a tool for them. That is basically it's a tool. But the concept of what I'm saying, reducing their eugenicists at heart, Holdren, who is our current science czar, has wrote a book in the 80s, and it's called Eco-Science, and you can go purchase this book and read it. In there, he calls for an 80% reduction of the world's population. This is our current science czar. There's a thing called the Georgia Guidestones. You can go look this up. In 1974, a man that called himself R.C. Christian, it's an anagram, very tall, distinguished man with a foreign accent, walked into Elberton Granite Factory in Elberton, Georgia, which happens to be the granite factory of the world. Plopped a huge amount of cash on the table and said, I want you to build a monolith. I represent the most powerful people in the world. And on this monolith, I want you to have, it's going to be the 10 directives for the future of mankind. And it's still there. It's called the American Stonehenge. 4 20-foot slabs, 18-inch thick, with all these satanic symbols around it. And the number 1 dictate on this says, carved in granite in 8 different languages, quote, to maintain the world's population at no more than 500 million in accordance with nature.
No, but I have a question. If I had the money, I could go to a granite factory and build a monument and say anything I want to say. What's that got to do with a conspiracy?
Well, again, if you look at all the people that are basically in charge now, if you look at the royalty of Europe, they were very sympathetic to Hitler's causes. They, was it the Prince of England had to advocate because of his, his support. Prescott Bush had his bank seized. This is George W. Bush's grandfather. Herbert Walker Bush's father.
Yes.
Had his bank seized by the FBI because he was funding Hitler.
All right.
So we're talking about a group of people, again, that are into total control, world domination, believe they are gods, and they look upon us as useless food eaters.
And this conspiracy wanted Hitler and the Nazis to really succeed and take over the world?
Well, they certainly were using, but the concept is that Hitler he went off on a tangent. There were two schools. There's two schools of thought in the elites in trying to achieve this goal of world reduction. One is to do it through basically the conventional means of war, biological war, killing us outright, just killing us outright. Then there's the others who want to do it incrementally, to go ahead and kill us incrementally, which I can bring up many good examples of this. And one of the ones I love to bring up, and it's so blatant, is fluoride in the water. These are called soft kill weapons. Now, we got fluoride in the water, you got GMO foods, we got chemtrails in the sky, they're poisoning our water or our land or our food. But fluoride. Now, fluoride showed up in our, about a little over 5 decades ago? For what?
I brushed my teeth with it.
Right. It's supposedly to fight Mr. Tooth Decay. Right. Okay. Well, here are some fundamental things that we have to understand. One, if you check out to see where fluoride comes from, what is fluoride? It is a byproduct of the aluminum and fertilizer manufacturing industry. It is a toxic waste. It is one of the most toxic substances known to mankind. There are laws against dumping it in the ocean.
All right.
So why do they put it in our drinking water? I mean, if it's for your teeth, why are we drinking it?
And the answer is...
Okay. Hitler had what was called the master plan. He got his intelligence agencies and his scientists together, and he says, I want you to come up with a drug we can put in the water to mass medicate the people with that will make them easier to control. So they started experimenting with different drugs. When they experimented on the prisoners that they had in the concentration camps with fluoride, they found that the IQ drops, and this is all scientifically studied, this is Nuremberg trials, this is there. The IQ drops an average of 20 points upon ingestion. And it made the prisoners more docile and easier to handle. Now, right after World War II, there was a project called Project Paperclip, where our government said, oh, we need to get these Nazis over here to fight the communists. So we brought over approximately 9,000 of top Nazi scientists and intelligence agents and put them into our government. We opened up laboratories from them, and they continued their experimentations. Soon after they came over, fluoride shows up in our water.
Okay, now before we run out of time, you have in front of you a poster,
right,
and it's a topic that I think you'd like to say something about.
Right. It says it right here. 2 planes, 3 buildings.
We're talking about the Twin Tower episode where the 3 buildings imploded.
Right.
All right, now what is that conspiracy?
Well, it's it's been going around. It ain't going away. It's getting bigger. That 9/11 was indeed an inside job, that there were people within our government, within our intelligence agencies, as well as other governments and other intelligence agencies, that conspired, planned, executed, and continued to cover up the crime of 9/11.
Okay, and the crime of 9/11, other than what those crazy pilots who ran the planes into the buildings.
Allegedly.
I'll let you mention that as well. I saw pictures of planes running into buildings.
The planes went in, but whether there were pilots or remote control.
But aside from that aspect of it, you see a greater conspiracy there. What is that?
Well, essentially that you can't change laws of physics for one day. There's several sites you can go to. One of them is Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, Firefighters for 9/11 Truth. Now, Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth has 1,634, as of yesterday, professionals, that some of them are the top of their fields, demolition experts, architects, and engineers, that have looked at the evidence of these three buildings coming down and have put their reputations and their names on the line, stating that there is no way in God's green earth those buildings came down without the help of demolition, without explosives being in them. Building number 7 would be the biggest question mark, not mentioned in the 9/11 report at all.
Not struck by an airplane.
Not struck by an airplane.
But it also collapsed.
In free fall fashion. 6 seconds, it fell in free fall. It was minimal damage. What brought this building down?
What is the official explanation?
There basically is no thermal expansion. They came up with magnetic fields at the time brought the building down. I mean, they never really explained. NIST took National Institute for Standards Technology. NIST took 9 years to come out with what they said, what they thought brought it down, which was, the thermal expansion of the fires within inside expanded the bolts and everything fell, which is impossible to happen. This building, I mean, anybody who's ever watched a building burn, it comes down in pieces. It comes down and or falls to one side. It doesn't do this.
No, what you're saying is clear. I understand what you're saying. Then the question is, what caused that building and the other two towers to do this thing, like an internal implosion? How was that done?
Well, that's what an investigation to bring out. That's what they were calling for. I mean, they're saying that we can see that there's no way the government's explanation holds water at all.
What is the hypothesis as to how they came down?
Well, there are independent studies of the debris have shown that there was thermite. Thermite is a high-grade military explosive that was placed in those buildings. Now, thermite is soluble in liquid. So you could put it in paint. Maintenance men can paint this on, not even know they're putting explosives on the building.
What you're saying is that someone or some group or some entity prior to 9/11 prepared those buildings to implode. Is that what you're saying?
Had to.
And you're saying that the official examination of the cause of those collapse did not even consider that possibility? Is that what you're saying?
NIST, who is charged with finding out why things collapse, never performed one single test for explosive materials at the scene of 9/11. This is unconscionable. It is their job to do that.
What is their explanation as to why they didn't?
When asked, they said they saw no reason to.
All right. Well, this is this is something that the entire American public would like to have an explanation for.
I would think.
Are we going to get one?
Well, if enough of us start waking up and raising our voice and demanding it, yes.
Are there enough of you?
Well, yes. If you look at every major poll that's ever been done on 9/11, CNN poll had 84% of the people saying that our government lied to us, they want another investigation. So, yes, that's why the government doesn't listen to that. That's why I say you go over and look at what our government does as to what the people want. We can't call ourselves saying we have a representative government. We do not.
I agree with that.
Yeah, we're not. I mean, these guys are representing someone. They're representing special interests, but they're not representing us. So who are they listening to? They're not listening to us. The calls for investigations have been asked for by family members of 9/11. The survivors. Yet everything's being shot down, because when you have a corrupt government, as we do from top to bottom now, this has been corrupted, our courts are corrupted. Jesse Ventura just had his suit thrown out. He was suing the TSA for unreasonable searches. And the judge threw his case out under the guise of national security reasons.
Okay,
what does that mean?
We've got a couple of minutes left. Mm-hmm. You can either add to what you've told us about the 9/11 or bring up something else, but it's just whatever you'd like to say for a minute or two.
Well, what I'd like to say is this is what I started out with. This is not a time for complacency. It's not a time for people to sit back and believe that things are going to go on as normal. We're on a precipice. We are going over the edge. We are going to see dramatic changes in our society very soon. We have a small window to stand up and start taking action, because throughout history, when you look at the American Revolution, at the beginning, only 2% of the people started fighting that revolution. At its height, 12% beat a world empire.
All right, now we have that small window of opportunity. What odds are you placing on any group being successful in using that window of opportunity and preventing these terrible things from happening?
50-50.
Okay, we got to go. I have to thank you very much for being on our show and remind our folks that, we still rely on logic and reason, and you have to come to your own conclusions. Thank you very much for being with us today, and we look forward to being with you again in the weeks to come.